GameMarx.
Welcome to GameMarx, the podcast for Xbox Live indie games and development. GameMarx, where gamers control the means of production.
Everyone, welcome to another episode of GameMarx. We are back after being on and off and on and off again. Rocky January, but Dylan's here with me.
Hi.
Cicely's here with me.
Hola.
Cracking open a beer.
Yes.
Trying to drink away the pain of RPG Maker. Last night, like laying in bed, lights out, she just goes like, I know why he's not blinking. And I'm like, because you fucking coded it wrong.
At which I punched him in the arm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's always the answer. But
yeah,
what was wrong?
You fucked it. I mean, it's possible there's a bug in the game framework, but no, you fucked it up.
Okay. It being RPG Maker, I hate to say it, but that is a distinct possibility. If I'm using,
more likely
.NET
than say
or,
like an XNA or OpenGL,
yeah,
have a bug.
Probably,
RPG Maker.
Yeah.
RPG Maker is a framework built of bugs.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. In RPG Maker, it's not a bug. It's just
it's a feature.
It's the way you're supposed to use it.
It's a feature.
Yeah.
What am I drinking?
So, speaking of that, there's another on the Funkworks site, youtube.com/Funkworks. We did an update, a check-in on Project Green Man. So we've done a 3-week point, or I guess 4-week point, really. It was 3 weeks after the first one, which is a weekend. So it was a 4-week point check-in. I subtitled it, The Shit Got Real episode.
I don't know that I've watched this, but I don't know if you guys have watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
but I recently did, and I just, Green Man. I just think of, everyone loves Green Man!
You sent that on Twitter, and I watched it, I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Well, if you've not watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and also, that show, because it started without Danny DeVito.
Yes.
So there's a few seasons without, and then it kind of shifted. It's a show that really just kind of found its place. It started out with, one concept over here, and instead of, destroying the plot and the cast and dumbing it down like Friends did,
yeah,
it's they just kind of evolved the setting until it worked for the personalities and the show, and
it didn't. I don't remember it getting that much different, but it starts out
I want to say they didn't even have a bar when it began.
No, they did, but the bar is not. No, they did have a bar.
Did they?
I remember a bar.
Danny DeVito basically came in as they brought him in as the father of two of the characters, and he ends up being the roommate of one of the other characters and all this other stuff.
Yeah, but that's season 3 or so.
It is, but what kind of happens at the beginning is it's all of these really terrible episodes. All these people doing these terrible things.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They're terrible things.
It's really dark humor.
It's dark humor. Some of them are hilarious.
And it's great, but it's the type of stuff that you feel bad about laughing at. And then as time goes on, it just gets so...
There's the one where they get the gun for the bar in the early season.
Yes.
And that is hilarious.
Yes.
That is... If you're going to go check it out, find the one with that. I'm going to shift us back on focus.
Anyway, Green Man!
We're going to have a time keeping this somewhat directed. First, we have to do some housekeeping. First order of business. So last episode, which was 2 weeks ago because we were off for a week, because, Knoxville weather is all fucked. I talked about Blueberry Podcasting hosting in WordPress and being frustrated because, I had an issue importing our podcasts and went to the forums and said, hey, I can use your post form to add one at a time podcasts to the database. Perfectly fine. But if I use the batch import, it doesn't work. Here's the error. Here's the link to the podcast I'm trying to import. One of the ones that have error. Trying to figure out what's different, what's going on. And instead of getting the investigative response and all that, I got told it's your host. It's your web host. And no, my web host is Azure. We're also a live podcast. We're already up. We're rocking it, and it works in one form, not the other. And then it was like, no, Azure is, a cloud service, not a web host and not a CDN, yada, yada. You need something that supports HTTP 1.0, 1.1, and do all that. And then I'm like on the plane to CES, all this is in the last podcast, but I'm on the plane to CES, basically firing off a reply, kind of pissed, like, look, Azure's a fucking CDN, guys. Azure supports HTTP 1.1. Look, it works in one form, it doesn't work in the other with your same plugin. Like, regardless of what Azure is, it works in Blueberry Form 1, not in Blueberry Form 2, whatever. Some posts and replies, and I think I tweeted at that point, and they saw my tweet, and it's like, oh, we saw your tweet, and, maybe you should send us a screenshot or something. I think is where it ended. Well, eventually, I finally got caught up to, all the shit back from CES. I put on a Funkworks video, by the way, videos of my trip to CES, if you want to check anything out. Like what I talked about last podcast, hands-on with the Razer and some things. I've got those videos up now. I had time to sit down and work on the GameMarx.com WordPress site again. And like, all right, let me dive in. Let me try to fix this. And I go in and I find out that they're using a WordPress method, which WordPress recommends. WordPress does not recommend you go off and do your own web calls. They're like, please use the WordPress core function so we can kind of isolate and handle any platform differences or version changes between different versions of PHP, and just, you'll be safer, if you use the WordPress function versus calling PHP directly. So use WordPress to go get a head request. I look up that function, and as I'm working on the list, and that function defaults to HTTP 1.0. If you don't know the difference between 1.1 and 1.0, basically the only difference between the two protocols is that 1.0 was for IP-based web hosting. So every website had to have its own IP address. Of course, that doesn't scale very well, so 1.1 allowed name-based hosting, and all it really says is you have to have this extra header that says host, and then give it the name of the host. So like a host, www.gamemarx.com. And then that lets the server know, like, there's 70 sites running on this IP, which one do you want, right? Because the main spec just says get/index.html, okay? So it doesn't know what index.html. But 1.1, they wanted to be backwards compatible with 1.0. So instead of saying get www.gamemarx.com/, which would not be backwards compatible, they put it in its header. So, I just posted in that forum, like, 4 lines. Okay, I found the bug in Blueberry. If you go read the documentation here, you see that this is a 1.0 method by default, and you pass in this argument, go to line 169 of this file, change this line, put in this argument, HTTP version equals 1.1, and all 115 episodes imported flawlessly, and work without further issue. And I didn't even put snark on it. I didn't add anything to it. I really just walked in that forum, took the microphone, tone line, dropped it out, And, of course, I think I did tweet at that point, like, and the stunning conclusion of Mike finds your bug and fixes your code or something. I saved my snark for Twitter, but I knew at that point they were watching Twitter.
Yeah, because I think you had...
The guy left a comment. Not only did he post in the forum and then make like a comment, and then...
Did you link to the forum post or anything in
the tweet?
Yes,
I did.
Yes, he did.
I did.
Okay.
And then,
I mean, how did he know which episode to go to is my question.
I don't. Somebody commented back, and I think CC'd Blueberry, and like, I heard you talking about the last podcast on that. And then I went back and played, and like, how bad did I get? And I didn't get that bad on them. Nothing I think, that I would apologize for, definitely. So he comes in there, basically there's another apology, on the site, and, the fix will be in the next version, and things like that. And, like, it's funny, because it's like, his posts, and on there is, like, his wife is a C# developer, and she basically explained to him what Azure was, and knowing the way husbands and wives get sometimes, I don't know if she called him, you fucking dumbass, like, Azure is no different than Amazon, S3, and it's compliant, and a CDN, and, but I just find it funny finding out, like, his wife is a C# developer in all of this mess. but he's like posting like, this is like this. Why the like the HTTP 1.1 spec is over 15 years old now, and it's pretty much been de facto standard as soon as it came out because IP name-based hosting. You know, like that's the way you do scale free cheapy hosting. You know, you can't have an IP for every site. So he's in there and it's basically like, you know, just fucking, you know, like, why would you default to 1.0? And I agree with him on that. Like WordPress, what the fuck? You know, why do you do the fuck? It's like there's a whole little, he's got like a reply to his own reply of like, what the fuck WordPress? You know, like we're fucked by the and apparently he's been fucked by the WordPress API before on like, shit broken and their API breaks his plugin and you could tell from his replies. But on the flip side, I'm like, yeah, but you've chosen to code in PHP. So you've made your bed, now sleep in it, okay? You know.
Well, you can't very well code WordPress in other languages, and WordPress is kind of
no, you can't. But
wait,
you got to do PHP for WordPress, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've gone in knowing you're working with PHP and WordPress, so
yeah,
this is the territory, dude. So that's handling just some bookkeeping. Let's just jump in right to what all the crazy number of people that don't normally turn out to the podcast have turned out to the podcast for. And let's talk about XNA is dead for reals this time. It's dead.
It's not actually overstated.
It's
rumors of its death are not overstated. It's actually
the funny thing is like the date of its death is next year, plus a month or two. But it's immediately dead now.
Well, I mean, I think Microsoft's argument is it still works.
Links in show notes. It started off with Promet and XNA MVP sharing sort of NDA breaking, but basically like they sent out an email to the XNA MVPs and said, "Hey guys, we just want you to know the XX." Let me read this. XNA/DirectX expertise was created to recognize. Now, when they say XNA DirectX expertise, they mean the MVP program. So the MVP program was created to recognize community leaders who blah blah blah. Presently, the XNA Game Studio is not in active development, and DirectX is no longer an evolving technology. Given the status within each technology, we are stopping the MVP program effective April 1, 2014. It will be retired. So, what that probably means is April 1 will be the last renewal. Now, Promet even said on here, this bit about DirectX is not an evolving technology is probably the worst possible fucking wording that this person could have put in that email.
Yeah.
What probably means is DirectX is now a part of WinRT. And it is part of the Visual Studio team. And it is no longer this out-of-band thing. It is now part of the OS, and it will ship with OS updates. And so what they mean is that it is no longer an independent, evolving entity. It is now part of the OS.
Yeah, I think one article I read said, like,
well, there was a clarification.
It's not like WinSock, you know.
Yeah, there's a clarification that came later from Microsoft, because this shit blew up huge. Everything from, I saw a post on this from, everything from, like, this means nothing, like, ignore all of this, it's irrelevant, we knew all this other, monogame, sharp DX, whatever, it means nothing. Which I think is rose-colored glasses and overly optimistic of like, this means nothing. To Microsoft is going to April 14th shut down your copy of Bastion and Fez, right? Because they're XNA based, right?
Yeah.
So like this ran the gamut on awesome game journalism. And I got all over the map. Now there was I meant to put this in here, so let me just go ahead and do this right now before I forget. Let's see. There was out of the spring because of XNA hashtag. I cannot spell because. BC. All right, let me just start over. You know how you start to misspell it, but then you can't spell the word in the middle of the word? You have to either type it all out or not at all. So because the X and A tweets are going out, and it's really generally snark-free because I think Steggs withheld his comments.
Yeah.
But generally snark-free of just all these great things, I even tweeted hey, I got an ebook published. I didn't tweet that we were doing Funkworks and GameMarx, but I tweeted, that stopped just dreaming about game dev and reading game dev books and started actually doing one to the point where we shipped a game, and it's because of XNA, and it's really become this really massive, great. I want to hopefully. I will not just say this. I will follow up and do a great post of here's some.
The best of.
Here's some best of, and here's also, I will fill in my bits of because of XNA. And I don't think any other technology, even Silverlight or, WPF or these other technologies that are kind of being pushed to the curb and being slowly replaced at Microsoft and things like that, are going to have this kind of connection and response when their day gets called,
No.
Also because those technologies, and you hit on this a little bit before the podcast, but those technologies have a place to go. WPF and Silverlight are iffy, but XAML is not. C# and XAML combination have a future.
Whether it's called Silverlight or WPF or what, and even if it was gone, there's still WinForms. There's still
stuff in that space. The problem with XNA is that there's not a from Microsoft. There's from the community, but there's not from Microsoft a easily approachable hobby and indie level game framework replacing it. It's basically
that isn't drag and drop WYSIWYG.
Not that XNA is WYSIWYG, but
no, that isn't. That's actually, you get into the code, you've got a little more control.
It's above raw C++ and DirectX,
right?
And adding a bunch of helper methods and allowing, easier access to get to that. But it's not hey, go HTML5 and JavaScript,
But it's
which is
also,
all right, well, fuck you, I want to make a real game.
But it's actually, it's not just that, it's the fact that you can run it on Xbox, no matter how good Monogame, SharpDX, all these other examples you named are, the average person can't run them on Xbox. And for people who grew up, our generation grew up on the NES, the SNES, the Genesis, that is huge.
Steggs is actually sharing, he really wanted to tweet. He was so tempted, but he held back. But he really wanted to tweet, because of XNA, I'm really jealous of shitty Minecraft clones, and I'm right there fucking with you, especially when the Fortress Craft guy just keeps tweeting over and fucking over of, how he's made $1 million, and, and 3 million sales, and it's dude, shut the fuck. I favored one of his tweets. I've been favoriting tweets that are extremely ironic to me. And he tweeted something about, he justifies all of his game work in the sales that come from his games. And I am thinking, I just saw that and it was just because you can justify it no other way. Any other way you try to justify what you've done is I've made a shitty Minecraft knockoff and, artistically and creatively void, and I'm just no. Fans love me because look at all the money I'm making. Obviously, because the money's coming in, I feel good about myself. Was the vibe I took from that, and I just starred that. I'm
you could. I would even argue that you're filling a niche that didn't exist before, the official Minecraft on the Xbox. But yeah,
and they're still buying it even after Minecraft. People are still buying them. They're still the top sell. So, I mean, it is what it is.
I hate to say it. I mean, it's not popular to defend Minecraft clones, but I think...
Well, I did, right there. When I said it is what it is, that was my defense.
Well, my point is, I think if I were playing on the Xbox, and I played a whole lot of Minecraft, I would feel like one of these indie games is going to get more love than the official game, which is kind of a side project for Minecraft.
Yeah.
But they are... I've listened to a couple of Minecraft podcasts, and excuse me, every week they talk about what they're doing here and there, and it seems like at least every 2 weeks comes up something that they're trying to push out for the Xbox. But they're waiting until they get enough stuff to make it worthwhile to push to Xbox.
Yeah.
But one of the tweets that I held back that I seriously thought about doing, and it's like, because of XNA's treatment by Microsoft, I am not developing any WinRT Metro Win 8 apps or running Visual Studio 2012.
Wait, running Visual Studio 2012?
No, I don't even give a fuck to run Visual Studio 2012. Like, I am so disenfranchised.
At home or at work? Like, at
period.
All? Okay, but...
No, I don't give a fuck. And it's like, why? Why do I need 2012?
You're just going to stick with 2010?
I'm running 2010. What do I need? What do I get out of 2012? I get some Metro-ass dialogues. I get Windows 8 Metro support that I don't give a fuck about. I get some DirectX C++ shit that I'm not going to fuck with. You know? It's like, what do I get out of 2012? You know? I don't care.
The fix is to change it to the dark theme.
I am willing to watch you Vista the shit out of this, and I'll wait for 2014. You know, I'll wait for Windows 9 in 2014. When you stop fucking this shit up and you so run this fucker into the ground, and that's because of XNA. That really is. I mean, it's not. I'm a Silverlight developer at work for a big chunk of what I do.
Yeah.
Also, you know, ASP.NET. And that's what I do at work, and some WPF. And these technologies aren't, you know, the greatest and the most loved and things like that. But they're not making me feel the active hate where I'm like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I'm not gonna ride any of your new shit right now.
Like I said, no one grows up thinking I want to be a line of business app developer when I grow up. So yeah, no, I can. You know, just because they have a solid product for, you know, ASP.NET and all these other things you're naming.
I don't know what the hell's going on in our chat. They're doing like emo tests with like emotes or some shit. I have no idea what the hell's going on.
It's like I've said before, though. XNA is kind of like the Firefly of game development frameworks. It gets canceled long before its time, and that just makes the fans love it even more.
I'm dropping the volume down a little bit on the live stream. Just they say it's chopping, and I don't know if it's chopping or clipping. So crank it up on your end, and we'll see. It could just be like, you know, the amount of
vitriol
going out is just greater than the bandwidth we have
Anger
here.
Doesn't take any more bandwidth. That's why.
Yeah, this is a myth.
All right. So yeah, that was what broke out. Went around. There is a forum post. Of course, no new XNA versions if you kind of want to discuss it. Going on. Microsoft came out and said, like, hey, you know, DirectX is going forward. But they pretty much confirmed XNA is not, you know. There are no new versions of XNA coming out at this point. So here's my take on this.
Yeah.
Okay? My take on this, my recommendation is to pick monogame. I think the list is monogame, Unreal, Unity, the really popular commercial XNA framework, which is supposed to have support for platforms and not be dependent upon XNA anymore, but they've never made that fucking official, and they keep, you know, like, coming soon, but there's new build drops, and it's a worst kept secret in XNA. All that's hyphened, by the way. That's that framework. That framework, frameworks, you know, you may know from such podcast as GameMarx. Anyway, yeah, Unity. You pick one of these and invest your time in that. Just go ahead and switch to that. Do not bother with fuck around with C++ and DirectX.
Yeah.
Now, here's a caveat to that. A, I'm assuming you're not trying to break into the professional game industry. Okay? You don't want to go work at EA or a studio or, get laid off at, by a THQ company because it got bought out like poor Stegs, because my understanding is that all game studios in Canada worked for THQ. I don't know where he went in that breakup, but, he was probably affected by that somehow.
Is that like a Canadian thing?
Well, THQ's Canadian, so, it was Canadian court, and, so at some point... Seems like they owned everything up in Canada. Was THQ somehow,
I didn't know if that was
way.
like a Canada joke. Like, we have socialized medicine and socialized game development.
Well, they kind of subsidize a number
THQ.
of stuff, so...
So I'm assuming that your goal is not the game industry.
Yeah.
If your goal is the game industry, then DirectX C++ experience it'd be helpful there. I'm assuming your hobby indie, your daytime web developer, nighttime indie game developer or something. If you're an indie developer, small but making it on your own, I would still say that's not a good place. I would still say that C++ and DirectX is not a place for you to go. The reason being is that C++ and DirectX gives you Windows. Right?
Yeah.
Some tablets nobody's buying right now. Some Windows systems nobody's buying right now, You do have a PC platform. That's pretty prevalent and popular and is really good for indies. But these other platforms, they give you Windows. They give you the tablets nobody's buying. They give you the tablets that nobody's buying, but more people are buying them than the ones that nobody are buying the other tablets, the Android tablets. They also give the tablets that people are buying the iOS ones. They give you the phones, the iOS, phone ecosystem, Android. They give you Mac. They give you Linux. And if there is to be an indie channel on the next Xbox. I like Nextbox. I like that instead of 720.
I like the Infinity.
The Nextbox, if there's to be an indie channel on that, it's clear it's not going to be XNA. I don't see any way that it's C# managed, because if they had a managed middle tier, it would be on WinRT and Surface and shit. They don't have that. It doesn't exist. So it's not going to be on the Xbox. So if it exists, it's going to be DirectX and C++, which makes me say it's not going to exist, because that's just level of access.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing Microsoft's going to give level of access. Maybe they learned their lesson, though, with the XNA runtime, because remember, all indie games are really one indie game to the system. They're XNA, and then there are sub-games, and that prevented... Yeah. That truly prevented, that did complicate achievements and leaderboards, because to Xbox, all indie games were the same game. So even if they wanted to do it, it was more complicated than just add the API, because it's the way the system read, they all ran into the same game.
But I see, you're saying that would be kind of a solution to...
But all that aside, if it's there, it's DirectX, it's C++. And guess what? Mono, Unity, Unreal, SharpDX, the other game framework that's going to announce soon that they don't have an XNA dependency anymore, and it'll all be sunny. They will all be able to port to that, no problem. So you will have zero risk going this route. All right? You'll be able to reach all these other platforms, and if you lose the Xbox console, no biggie. You have access to everything else. And if they do offer it, these guys are going to be able to port to it. And I really, Unity's already fucking everywhere, like a beast, right? I think more platforms than Unreal at this point. Like, it's scary.
Unreal is kind of like the higher end.
Yeah, Unreal is still like a AAA tier, and they're kind of like offering indies like who want to work on that. I almost see Unreal back to like, if you want to work in the games industry, then consider Unreal. That's where it's at. But if your goal is not to work in the games industry,
just to create a game,
I don't know that Unreal is your best bet, right? Compared to some others. But, it's not
depends
a wrong
on the type
move.
of game you're making.
It's not a wrong move, though. It still gets you a lot of cross-platform stuff. So, it's still in there. And so, yes, by announcing this XNA is dead thing, I think what Microsoft has really said to me is any technology is better than the one that we provide for you. Your option is anything else.
And they've actually kind of been, I won't say promoting or pushing monogame, but it's definitely been on their list of, hey, you can use this to build games for...
It's kind of been like the go-to, like, XNA is not dead. There's this monogame. And it's like, you don't understand, though. Once I'm on monogame, I'm probably not coming back to your platform.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I am not, like, going back to... I'm not giving up iOS now. Like, I got iOS. I figured out how to get my shit to run in monogame. I figured out its quirks. I'm there. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
It's supported. I mean, that's really what the crux of the fervent arguments and the passion over XNA is not whether it's necessarily better or not. It's, I like it, I know it quirks, I'm comfortable here, and I don't want to change, and I'm having to change. And that's a big portion of a lot of the anger that's involved there. And I think we actually did buffer down, because there's a flash queue meter, and now it's empty. So I think we're going out okay, and I think we actually did buffer up packets for a bit, yeah. The girls probably just started hitting their Netflix queues or something as they go to bed.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's kind of what my whole takeaway from this is. And I think, go read the Because of XNA, go post in the forum if you want to discuss a little bit. But I think myself, I think it's time to go Unity. I think I need to go into Unity. That's the one I like the best of the options. But I do want to play with monogame.
Yeah, I would like to do that as well.
And I'll bring it up a little bit later in the podcast. It'll come back up with another topic. I want to cover this for a little bit. Cliff Bleszinski gave some advice to Saints Row. Did you see this?
No, I did not.
Cliff Bleszinski started tweeting, because now he's left Epic. And basically that Saints Row did poorly, which I challenge that assertion right off the bat. Giant Bomb, 2011 Game of the Year, Skyrim. Number 2, Saints Row the Third. Number 8, Gears of War 3, right? But he's basically tweeting that, hey, because they had big purple dildos in the game and gimp suits, they destroyed their opportunity to be awesome and big. And it's like, I think because they did that, because it was just aware of itself, it was fucking over the top.
Yeah, that's what I'd always heard about it. It was kind of a parody of...
It's a stupid fun game.
Yeah.
It was a GTA ripoff up until the third. And then they became their own thing. I think we talked about this in our Clones episode of how, like, you can start off cloning and evolve into your own awesome thing. And it's like, they evolved into their own awesome thing. They have their niche, they have their definition now. And, I mean, Cliff's, like, tweeting, like, you don't want to make the male audience, well, I don't know if you say specifically male audience, but you don't want to make guys, like, ashamed or afraid to be caught playing your game. And it's like, there's so much, like, hey, bro, and, like, and it's Cliff Bleszinski, and I've read his tweets now, and I'm, like, going back, and I'm, like, getting a little pissed off of what he's doing, because I'm starting to think, like, you make the game with the machine gun, with the fucking chainsaw attachment, tell me that's not a fucking penis fantasy, okay? That is phallic fantasy 101, and I may grant you that to the casual gamer, that may not be obvious, but I'm not talking to the casual gamer now. I'm talking to fucking Cliff Bleszinski, premier game developer, started with Unreal, leads a company, everybody fucking runs his engine, been game designing for ages. We're not, like, we should be above, these assertions should be a little bit higher than that. Also, he's making these fucking tweets while the studio is being dissected. you're basically saying like, yeah, you guys, read between the lines. You guys might have not gone bankrupt if you didn't have purple dildos. Purple dildos ruined, your QHQ.
Yeah, that's...
It's kind of like, he's not saying that, but it's the wrong time to be saying this.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking, like, as I'm reading his tweets, I'm realizing he really is the bro guy.
He is still Cliffy B.
He's still Cliffy B. And then I'm going down, it's not an act, it's him. And it's getting to a point where, like, every photo of you has to be with your little hot cheerleader wife that you have. And it's starting to, like, where's just a shot of you, dude? Like, why does all your Twitter pics and everything, like, it's a fraternity, and it's just like, you make the fucking bro of do shooter. Like, I mean, that's what...
Well, actually, I'm not...
It's to the point where, like, Marcus Phoenix and Dom have, like, this bro, almost homosexual type relationship in the game. I mean, it's like, Dom's wife died, and he's more distraught when he gets separated from Marcus, And it's just like, yeah, and it's like, even the women are bros in the Bro of Duty shooter, and it's like, I'm just seeing it like, holy shit, you don't see it. Like, I don't think he sees it of like, no, Saints Row needs to be the purple dildo game.
Well, actually...
Because it offers a diversity that a guy like me... And you know what? For the record, I liked Gears of War. I played Gears of War. It's like... It's the one when I stick my toe in the bro waters, that's the one I'm going to go to, because I don't want to go online.
Yeah.
And Gears of War offers me a significant single-player campaign, not like a 4 or 5 hour, oh, we used a nuke, ooh, isn't that deep? Look, torture, oh my god, that, like, the Call of Duty and Battlefield and shit offer. It's like, yeah, I can get a satisfactory gameplay out of it, and I'd be like, alright, cool. I got my Doom itch scratched, my old school Doom and Quake thing.
And I watched him play it for a while, and it looked pretty fun.
Yeah, but it's still like, Marcus Phoenix running around, chainsawing guys. Oh, come on, and it's
definitely a first-person shooter too.
Oh.
I cannot play it.
Well, and the thing is, like, what's strange is a game like Saints Row the Third that is goofy to the point of like gimp suits and dildos. To me, that seems like the kind of thing that bros would find hilarious, because it's just like, for the same reason that they find over-the-top violence in Gears of War awesome.
But you gotta remember, like, this is the same,
over-the-top sexuality.
If you're playing that by yourself, and you're a bro, and, like, the wife walks in, or the other bro walks in, like, oh, you're gay, bro, haha. You know what I mean? Like,
See, I
same,
interpret
like,
that as over-the-top sexuality, not
no homo,
necessarily
bro.
male or female. It's just,
well, that's the thing,
sexual.
though. I do believe that Cliff is at the extreme spectrum end of that, right? Brodom. The bro spectrum.
Apparently, I'm not
the bro
familiar
rainbow.
with the bro rainbow.
There's
the bro
a bro
spectrum.
rainbow. There's
well, I
one
think
rainbow.
because he's
The
extremely
Brotinuum.
famous. I think because
I like
he's
that.
extremely famous, you can easily be in your own bubble
Yeah, I can
and
see
not
that.
be with the community and kind of leave touch. Because I actually think the more... A lot of the guys that are actually the bros we're talking about would actually play Saints Row the Third and be like,
Yeah.
I got a fucking rubber dildo and,
Yeah.
like, fucking check it
Exactly,
out.
that's
Yeah.
my point. And honestly...
I hope to God that Volition in Saints Row the Fourth puts a chainsaw attachment on a fucking purple dildo.
Because why
If
not?
they don't, they're missing... I mean, this goes back to...
I want a purple dildo saw.
This goes back to the Jay Wilson slime. Do you know the Jay Wilson slime?
No.
Jay Wilson, I forget his first name, was a reviewer in Computer Gaming World and shit all over Ultima Online when it came out. And they put, when you hit a slimes break into two little slimes, and they put a chance in there that sometimes the slimes would split and be named Jay Wilson. And it's like, they need to do that. Just throw that in there. That would be fucking hilarious. That would be the nice middle finger that Volition could do in Saints Row the Fourth, and I will love them for death if they do that.
I don't know. Like I say though, the reason like that sort of thing turns me off to Saints Row the Third is the same reason that like I don't play shooters, because guns and explosions and violence and awesome. But I don't know. You're almost getting into the territory here where you're calling out Cliffy B as a fake geek, and I don't want to get into that discussion.
Not so much like fake geek.
Well, but you've set up like that is the male stereotype of the fake geek.
But yeah, he's on that spectrum of like male stereotype bro guy.
And I'm not saying that because that's like a big contentious issue, and that's...
And as a game designer,
you know,
he should have an appreciation for... I'm not saying that he needs to play and enjoy or even feel comfortable with Purple Dildo Simulator, okay? But have an appreciation for a diversity in game design.
Yeah. And especially
if this was a couple guys tweeting back and forth, who gives a shit? This is Cliff Bleszinski, as a high-level game designer, should, like, appreciate there's some people who fucking like all different kinds of games. And not to come out and say, like, you should have taken this total serious tact and made, basically he said, like, I like the mechanics of GTA, I like the mechanics of Saints Row better than the gameplay mechanics of GTA. So you should have given me GTA 5. Saints Row the Third should have been my GTA 5.
Like, you get the total package. You get the gameplay and the feel, you know, the flavor, and
it's like, no, GTA 5 will be GTA 5, and Saints Row is becoming its own thing, and it's popular. That's the thing that really rubs me wrong, is like the premise that it was not successful.
Yeah, it may not have been,
and it was probably
successful.
the best. It was the most successful things that Volition had and that THQ had at the very end there. I mean, it was so successful that they basically canceled the DLC and like, we gotta fucking crank out a sequel fast because sequels sell more than the DLC.
And it almost saved them.
And yeah, maybe it can save us.
Almost.
But it turns out that the long tail of the Wii U,
too much.
The Wii U not the Wii U, the U draw.
Yeah.
Just keeps beating and beating and beating, boy. You don't get back from the U-draw. Alright, so, other issue I wanted to get to on this podcast, because it keeps actually coming back up, and I have been avoiding it, and saying, like, oh, we're not going to talk about it, and skipping it. But I figured I would bring up the, violence debate. The guns and game media violence debate. The reason, and I'm just linking to a generic article here, just kind of as a representation in the show notes. I'm not really commenting on specifics. The reason I haven't mentioned it is we don't have a debate on this show. This is not a topic we can do an honest debate on, because none of us are really taking the position that at any level guns are causing homicidal maniacs. I'm sorry, that
video games.
That video games are causing homicidal maniacs. It keeps reoccurring and it keeps getting pressed. And I think the discussion to have is that as a designer, now think of, no, I'm not saying to not put violence or not go through with your what in there, but make sure you have a defensible meaning of why it's in there, right?
Yeah.
It's like Spec Ops: The Line, okay? It's about post-traumatic stress disorder. The game really is making some commentaries on post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm not going to represent that without extreme gun violence, because that's what triggers post-traumatic stress disorder, you know? And, you know, it's like, if you push harder on that, it's like, I think you'll be very fairly, the people who are attacking something like that will be by the majority put in the censorship camp of like, you're attempting to censor, and they're trying to make some artistic comment, and you're lumping them all in, you know, as one thing. I even think the modern military first-person shooter and Call of Duty and all of those have their, you know, defensible positions and things like that. So I think where it's going to get more interesting, or at least where, and again, the sides attacking are not brilliant, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's always like, what was his name, Thompson or whoever that always
Lamar
attacked.
Alexander?
No, whoever tried to like ban game media, the lawyer.
Oh, Jack Thompson.
Jack Thompson,
I
yeah.
forgot
He
about
lost
him.
his-
It's always like he went after like the wrong games of like, look, if you want a game to go after, you could go after these things as like reasons to pull in. And, you know, there was like the game that was made and released to beat up Anita Scarcesian, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that is sick and disgusting and almost indefensible.
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to stand up and defend that under fair use, or free speech, right? And so you got a really obvious one to go and target, but instead, you target the guns in Ratchet and Clank or something. I'm just using that as an example. And it's like, that gun literally shoots a fist that punches you, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like Wile E. Coyote level of violence. You're a moron, you know? It's definitely going to be a touchy segment. It's hard to bring it up and defend it, because there are real lives lost.
Yeah.
And there are people who are looking for answers when there is none. You know?
Well, I mean,
There is not a reason. You know, you can't tell that person, your son, your wife, your daughter, your child, your father, your mother are dead because of this, and it's better. Like, no. You can't tell that. And even, I think it's going to play out okay, because I think what the administration have done, Obama, Biden, and all that, is they have, I think, just played lip service. I think if you step back and you don't overblow it and you put
Yeah.
it within context, I think it's a very deft political move to go ahead and include some stuff about guns, but it's at this research level, and it's like, it's already been researched, and you kind of know what's going to come out of that research anyway, but at the same time, like, you appease both sides.
yeah.
I haven't banned anything, I'm going
Well, I
to
think
study it, and then both sides hear what they want to hear.
That's a constitutional issue, I think, is that they actually took the position of stepping back and not making any executive orders that could be considered like an overreach.
Okay, yeah.
So on one hand, yeah, I can see how that's a kind of this political move, and on the other hand, it's just realistically what they can do without,
There's a video, I don't have it linked, but there's a video of Adam's Sessler
Yes.
on Fox, and you can tell he was well prepared, well ready to go into Fox. And of course they asked the leading questions, of like, don't you think there's some responsibility? And
He's like, no, we got a rating system.
and he's like, no, and I love it that he pulls out of like, if my tweet was like his quote of like, if your game is named after a felony,
You probably
your
should.
child probably shouldn't be playing that game. And, like calling out parental responsibility ratings, but he also called out like the Vatican calling opera evil and comic books being outlawed. And
yeah, we've had this
it's
discussion
like,
before.
this comes up, and this is a growing segment. I think it's good because we've talked about games as art, and we talked about on the prior podcast of like, say, Spec Ops and The Walking Dead, of like, there's more than the power fantasy now available and happening, and that's just going to better strengthen that cause of like, hey, no, games are an art form, games are an entertainment, games are free speech, which, by the way, has already been held up. It's already been Supreme Court decided, so it will take a lot for the Supreme Court to even hear this case again. But pretty much the courts are going to say, the lower courts are going to say, well, there's a Supreme Court ruling on this matter already when California banned violent video games. And, sorry, but, the Supreme Court said this, so we hold up the Supreme Court's ruling. and then they'll appeal. But then the Supreme Court, if they don't take it up, it's dead, right? When the Supreme Court says, we're not taking this case, it's dead. And it takes a lot to convince the Supreme Court to have a case that they feel they have already ruled on the matter.
Yeah. And even as far as like public opinion goes, I don't think you would see a lot of people for, banning violent video games or anything, because all of the options that are presented from these knee-jerk explanations require some segment of the country giving up something, and that is completely distasteful to pretty much everyone. So we'll talk about it, and then nothing will
Adam
happen.
Sussler as well, who said, like, with the NRA and the gun lobbyists trying to point to video games as the cause, he had some just genius quote of, like, it's a funny patriot who will sell out the First Amendment to defend the Second.
Yeah.
And it's like, I love that quote, because it, like, hits right at home of, like, you're this ultimate constitutionalist, which is what
everyone picks and chooses.
But is what has always been the gun advocacy's number one defense is it's the constitutional right, and if you muck with the Constitution, it's a slippery slope, and it leads to Nazis and anarchy, right? And that's their strongest stalwart. And it's like, well, if it's a slippery slope, you've kind of screwed yourself on this debate. Ignore the fact that we've amended that son of a bitch, 30 plus times, whatever. It's a slippery slope to mess with it. And I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into the gun
I think what's
side of it, because I think it doesn't play well. I think you don't do that. Don't do what the NRA has done. Don't like, oh no, it's them. Don't go like, oh no, it's guns. It's like, speak to games and violence and violent behavior related to games and any correlations there may be, and address that topic independently, and don't try to just
pawn it off on someone else. Well, and I think, this is probably not popular, but I think the knee-jerk reaction of, well, of course it's not violent media, is just as bad as saying, well, of course it's not guns. Not that I think that violent media necessarily leads directly to, people being more violent, but I think it's sort of the cultural reaction by default that we have to violence. Like I was in GameStop a couple weeks ago, and one of their ads for one of the games was like talking about it's got all these guns and explosions and stuff, and you kind of realize that whatever the game, it's not the effect of game violence, it's that they're playing to
well, it's a question of art imitating life or life imitating art. Like it or not, are this gun-loving country, Not
necessarily even gun-loving, but the idea of violence is desensitized to the idea of it being
it's cool. In our media, it's hoorah, American forces, and, it's playing all that up. And
well, it's like the bro stuff you're talking about. Well, part of it is...
But it's like if you're playing up the military, then, of course, people want to play awesome military shooters like you're playing up our military as this awesome fighting force.
And it would be, I think, the issues that people have with violence and sexuality in media is if people didn't just use them, take the easy path with using them. Things like Spec Ops, where they disturb you without necessarily being over the top and gruesome, but just to see that, yes, these are not necessarily good things. These are not necessarily cool things. We've seen the cool side of them, but there is other...
So, I think that's good on that topic. I kind of finally wanted to acknowledge it because we haven't been... because I don't think we have enough to make a topic of it, and
it's...
what needs to be said is already being said.
And I'm not sure we would come out with any... definitive.
I'm authoritative on chainsaws and dildos, but politics, not so much. Smiletune talked about in chat basically about like who's paying the government more and lobbyists, and it's like I had a tweet a little while back of like the one thing that's clear to me is we are by far not lobbying, putting enough money into lobbying for the game side, because we wouldn't be scapegoated if we were lobbying better.
Yeah, but I don't think enough people. I don't want to get into this, but I was going to say I don't think enough people vote on the basis of video games, nor really should they be like single
But that's
issue.
what makes it the easy go-to option.
Yeah,
because it's not a constituency get me elected or get me sponsored or get me lobbyist funding.
They're taking away our video game.
Guns, medicine, and video games seem to be the hot topics, and video games is the only one of those three.
Yeah,
that
the senator is not getting money from the video game lobby, whereas he is from the other two. So it's real easy to focus his blame there and not piss off where he's getting his money from. You know, you don't bite the hand that feeds. So, again, it just goes back. My number one complaint with our government is until we fix the lobbying problem, until we fix the money in politics from private corporations, substitute your issue of whatever. And I'll just trace it back and say, like, well, trace the money, you know, and that'll be that politician's opinion. And, yeah, maybe there's a few good ones out there, but not enough to sway the vote. Since we're on hot button topics, let's just go ahead and get into gender in the games industry. No, I'm just calling this out. Polygon had a good article. I'm going to link to it in there. And it was a good response because EA, Electronic Arts, put out like this PR press release of like the women of EA. And it was almost like, you're fucking joking, right? You're trying to whitewash this, and you're getting all these women on camera to say, like, I'm great at EA, and I'm so respected. And so there's this follow-up article, and the stats in here of, like, the Globe, I guess is the source of the survey, reports only 11% of game designers are female, and only 3% of programmers are. So it's like these statistics that EA was pushing, you know, of like the percentage of women in gaming is like, you're counting your HR department and your management, and you're not counting like what, if a kid told you he was going to be making games, that's the job he wants, right? You added in all these others to buff your numbers up, but if you just focused on what we would call the core, then it looks really bad. And those numbers look really bad. Like 3% of game programmers are female. That was there. So I'm going to link to that article. It's a good article to read. Speaking of Arnita Kerskisian and the tropes in video games, I don't know if you saw this or not. She set up a Tumblr. And her crew, as they're researching the first trope, which will be Rescue the Princess. So the first video will be on Save the Princess trope. It's like there's just so many princesses in video games that to just start tagging them all, they just started a Tumblr and they just started posting. And if you scroll down, like this Tumblr almost like never ends of like all these games.
Yeah, I was surprised that this was all the first episode. And
well, I don't think they're gonna list them all. They just like, we're not gonna list them all, I think is what she said, or whatever. So they just like made the Tumblr to share the result. And I mean, some of these, like I wasn't even thinking of, like when they're like Bubble Bobble, you're saving a princess.
Yeah, you are.
Oh yeah, in a lot of cases, that's a common theme in stories going, you know, way back before movies, video games, comic books, you know, all these very modern forms of media. So, I mean, it's not that all of these are necessarily evil, but I'm sure, like, Bubble Bobble, you didn't even notice because it was this detail. It was this sort of, like,
background
hand-waving to go, like, yeah, this is why you're doing it.
I think it just flashed up on the screen, like, once when you put, just before you put your quarter in, is like, go save the princess, help, help! And then you just put your quarter in and you never see the damn princess. I don't know what the fuck she's doing.
Well, I mean, you have to have a reason you're doing whatever you're doing, so you...
They're fucking bubble-blowing dinosaurs. They could be going after their mom for all I fucking care.
Yeah. So, I'll link to the Tumblr. It's kind of a cool nostalgia trip, too, to go look at all these games. But, man, you really get hammered on, like, man, this trope has been beat to death. Like,
I guess it's kind of like I was saying with violence and sexuality. It's also for more mundane things, like, you don't even notice it because we just expect it to happen.
Yeah.
So, you know,
why
culturally...
Are you doing this? Just save
the princess, of course.
Save the princess, yeah. I think the cave had an excellent. I watched a quick playthrough of the cave, and there's in the cave the warrior guy, the knight, has to go save a princess at some point, and the princess she shows up. And like talking to her, I'm like, "Oh, you're here to win my affection by go killing a dragon and getting treasure or something. Am I saying all the right words for you? Here, go get this, kill that dragon, and fine, I'll give you my locket or whatever.
No, it was just
now leave me so I can continue my physics research here.
It was get the treasure of the dragon.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to be an interesting episode to explore the trope, and it's kind of nice to like have an episode documenting it and explaining the history and kind of pointing it out. But I think it is one that is known pretty well at this point, because games are parodying the trope at this point as well. But it's just cool just to scroll down this Tumblr and just like be reminded. Alright, off the hot button issues. Tiled had a release, which means I will need to get at some point, and I don't know when I'm going to get the moment to do this, but Bjorn, I don't know exactly how to say his name. He is like Swedish Finland. It has.
Does it have the umlaut thing?
Umlauts and backwards E, and I don't know. There's all kinds of weird stuff in his name. But the guy that maintains the tiled editor, he updated and published 9.0 of that. So a lot of it is, the bulk of it is things I don't have to add to Xtiled for map support. The bulk of it is awesome interface type things done and cleanup. Like one of the big things that are really awesome is like a mini map view, so you can see like the entire layer at once that you're working with, and kind of zoom in and scroll in about that. But a lot of other things going. But there is some like ellipses as a polygon object now. Or there's an ellipse object like there was a polygon. I had support for that. There's support for terrain mapping. And he says like this is probably not for games, it's for some other non-game uses.
Wait, what exactly is terrain mapping?
I'm not 100% sure, so I'm not even going to attempt to answer.
Okay.
It's there now though. Something about like, each tile has 4 weighted values or something, and
like how you would build a topographical kind of like height.
I want to say you're right, but I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, so I'm not going to confirm nor deny.
I can't imagine what values you would attach to the 4 corners of a square.
I'm assuming that when there's 4 values, they're attached to the square, and
they have something to do with height.
It would make sense in a tile-based system, but yeah, they're there.
Sure.
I'll add support for it in Xtiled, because it'll be a data format, and hopefully if that's something you need, it makes sense to you.
You can get that information if you want it.
Yeah.
Don't know why you would.
Yeah. So that'll be there. There's a few other tweaks, and there's support. There's basic support in there right now for a isometric staggered layout, and I'm not exactly sure what that. I think it's like a spacing between the tiles is greater or something. I'm
trying to like imagine what
exactly.
That would be.
I think by playing with the editor, it might become clear to me. I may or may not have rendering support built in for that, because isometric was tricky.
Yeah.
For me to get in there.
It's really a matter of finding someone who needs it. And, like,
yeah. So, I mean, we do have isometric rendering support in Xtiled from tiled maps. But I think really for tiled to make a lot of sense to do isometric, this is something that's come up a couple times, and it's a big change. It is a groundbreak. It is a large change, but would be to control the order of rendering. So right now the tiles render top down. If you're 100% like no overlap, who cares what order you render? But if you're isometric or your tiles extend and overlap, then you may want to render bottom up, or you may want to render top down. You may want to render left to the right or right to left. So like there's like, hey, there's been a request for that. And Bjorn has said, you know, like, here's kind of where you could go to add it in, and I kind of looked at it for a bit and realized, like, I'm not familiar with Qt and C enough to go in here that I feel confident putting this in and altering the base format and adding a patch for that. But I have seen it requested, so that may come at some point. But I think at that point is when isometric really gets useful, because you can control the ordering to have, like, a bottom-up draw level. Also, if you're doing isometric, even with us, you're going to have to handle a layer pass at a time, right? 'Cause you're kind of going to have to, like, at some point, render the player before you completely render the level, you know, because they're going behind things and stuff. So there's that in there as well. A new site that a new to me site is game dev tutorials, game dev tuts plus. It's gamedev.tutsplus.com. So it's gamedevtutsplus.com. One I'm linking to here I thought was a really good one is what is a normal map? And the article really just breaks down what a normal map is, why you would use one, how you could create one, the different options that you would have for creating a normal map. And, you know, this is something we had in our Knoxville game design meetup group not too far back covered. So, I mean, that article wasn't too earth-breaking to me for what normal maps are, but I thought, like, it was a really well-written article. But I have seen just a lot of really good tutorials on this site, and I think it's a good resource, so I'm linking to it. So check out Game Dev Tuts Plus. A lot of good stuff on here. Here's one for some interesting discussion from Zeboyd, Robert Boyd, Who Saves the World author. And he's basically thinking out loud in his blog posts, as he tends to do quite a bit. His blog is worth following just for that alone. Of a better classification for JRPGs and RPGs in general. Because it's like we tend to use the term action-oriented RPG or JRPG, but there's so much nuance within that term. He's kind of wanting to, for design purposes, not to like say like, hey, we should all start calling these games this and these games that. He's just like, as a design language. And so what he proposed was 9 criteria to consider when making your RPG, and to kind of answer these 9 criteria. So not necessarily to say, I'm making a JRPG, but to go down these 9 criteria and say, what do you want to make, and make that game. Because they're all kind of getting hybrids now. So the 9 criteria. Number 1, the combat system. Is it turn-based or real-time? And real-time, is it menu-based, or does the player have direct control over their characters, you know? So like Chrono Trigger real-time versus Dragon Age 2, or Dragon Age real-time, you know?
Yeah.
So combat, I think, is pretty straightforward. Positioning. Does the position of your characters matter on screen? Right? Because, what's that new one that came out? Ni no Kuni?
Ni no Kuni.
Yeah. Position matters in that, but it's menu-based combat.
Well, I mean, Chrono Trigger is kind of the same way. Position matters, but you don't get 100% control over it.
Yeah, so in Ni no Kuni, you have 100% control. Like, you're running your guy around in 3D space during the fight, and it matters. Like, you can totally, like, they cast a spell, and then you just run to the side and dodge it.
But he doesn't cast when you press the button. He still has a timer that he has to go through when he does whatever he's doing.
But he can, positioning matters. He can dodge things just by moving. Party size. So how many characters does the player have in control, you know, active in their party?
Multi is definitely, yeah.
Power progression. Is the player's party power linear, or do they have more freedom in how they choose and develop their power skills? So is it kind of like Chrono Trigger? You just level up and level up and level up. You don't really like spend points on any stat. You can kind of influence things with like power tabs and things like that.
But it's very linear because all the characters have a class versus, I guess, something like Final Fantasy VI.
Say Skyrim. I mean,
Yeah.
like something where you can just like, you know, any kind of D&D inspired system where you almost don't even have classes. You just go in and dump a bunch of points, and that makes you this, you know, in there. But that's a lever to play. Is the story predetermined, or does the player have the power to affect the story in major ways? You know, so like, you know, Final Fantasy VII, that story is predetermined even though there's major events. Mass Effect's a bad example, but, you know, does the player have control over their story?
How much? Because, I mean, there's, you know, no...
Within limits, of course.
Yeah, you can't do completely open and free.
Focus. Is the game more focused on story than gameplay? And that's not a reflection of quality, but that is basically a component of the game. So you could make the case to say that Dragon Age, the game was heavily focused on the gameplay. Leveling up, getting loot, gear, specking, fighting was much more a factor in the game.
Why are people playing your game? What are they looking for?
Then you could say, like, Chrono Trigger might have a heavier story influence than its combat. Although its combat was revolutionary.
Although, like, especially Final Fantasy 13, all the comments about that, you know, it took 20 hours to get good, but, you know, or whatever. But people were playing it for the story, you know.
Focus, exploration. So is exploration linear? Basically, is your path through the game linear? Or does it pretty much open up to a world map and then do your own thing, you know, like Skyrim? You know, like, hey, go anywhere. Even Dragon Age and Fable, go anywhere. Versus, like, no, you're really guided to have to go down these paths. Like 13 was, right? Yeah, it was 13.
I guess.
Whatever the new one was, it was fairly linear. That was the complaint. Art style, stylized or more realistic. I would say that's almost just a thing you decide on the game, but it's not really a classification to me.
Yeah.
To me, that one does not fit in this list. That's what kind of art do we want for the game? Okay, check. It has no bearing on anything else,
on the
really.
game type, anything. But it is kind of a component because JRPGs tend to have one style, be a little more cartoony. Western RPGs tend to have a different style.
Yeah.
Like Final Fantasy games kind of skirt that line, or the newer ones do, but...
A lot of new ones are skirting that line, though. And success, which I also kind of see covered...
Yes, I would like it to be successful.
I kind of see this covered above. He described it as, is the game success based on the player's skill and reflexes or strategies and tactics? And I kind of see this handled as like in combat system and positioning and parties. Like, that's already kind of... And I think those last two I could almost like cut. And almost say like story and focus could be kind. I would almost distill this list. But again, like I said... This is almost a thinking out loud post for discussion. And I think it's a good, like, if you're going to make an RPG of any sort, like, to take this out and then just, like, fill in these blanks. You know? Because it almost will make you think about what is it that you want. Did you consider how many people are in the party? Have you answered that? Is it multiple controlled, or are you playing one character at a time?
I think most people, when they're envisioning a game, probably think about these things, but... they're just going to tell someone it's an RPG. And so, you know, like, it's not obvious. It's obvious to you because that's kind of your
I would say that I think people don't think about these games until the moment that they're implementing them. I think that you could very easily overlook the party system.
Yeah.
As far as, like, defining exactly how you want it to work. And that you would just say, like, oh, I'm making this JRPG, and I want to have these elements, and then I'm going on, and it's like, oh, wait, party, yeah, I want multiple control, and like, oh, do I want you to switch the lead characters, or is there one lead character? I think I'll go with this. And that kind of leads to the quagmire of fuzzy game development and unknown paths, whereas if you just sat at the beginning and said, wait a minute, okay, no, we want this because it ties in well with this. And you thought about, like, you'll have a party, you will not be able to switch main character control, and the primary character will always be present. Or it'll be Chrono Trigger, and you'll have a party that you select from your group, and if they're not in your party, they're not leveling up. You know, those kind of things, and you
I can kind of see like a lot of the details are
would not
kind of
get
left
fleshed out. Yeah,
and do matter because they change the way you play the game.
Also, on Robert's blog post, Robert's been doing like these weekly art posts where he's just posting either art of his previous characters, you know, from his own games, or inspired by other games, just fan art. And on this last one, he posted a really cool animated GIF that may or may not animate because it may have been open too long in my browser window. So let me just see if I can refresh it there for the live stream.
Too long?
Yeah.
Yeah, but just quit like playing. So it basically time lapse, not really time lapse, but every step of the process in this post he outlined, and then said, like, first I do the rough positioning sketch, then I add this, then I add this, and I add this, and I take this out, then I add this, and I add that. And there's in this animation, he basically goes through and you see like each step of the process. I thought it was pretty cool to see. I mean, seeing stuff like that for me helps me say, like, okay, maybe I can do some artwork. As somebody would think, like, wait. Okay, you're giving me a framework and a system that I might be able to play around with. Or, like, seeing this, I can connect the dots. Like, you ever seen the wooden artist puppet?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like a positioning puppet that an artist can get to help them model, but it's really basic, okay? And it's like, okay, I don't really see... Like, I get it. It looks like kind of like a wooden skeleton. But seeing the positioning sketch, it's like, oh, I see. It looks like the puppet.
And even working with an artist, I think, you know, being able to see all the stages, you can look at early work and go, okay, I see where this is going. It also may
just help give you, like, oh, these are the final polish touches. I get it. Because, like, oh, I get up to this clean outline and color it, but it has
like
that amateur look.
You have to do.
It kind of has this amateur look, and then you see the final touches that take it from amateur to pro level, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I get it. A little shading here, a little not perfect, you know, rough coloring and things like that, and roughing it up in places and things like that. It also... I'm just stealing this from Segment the Cat, but also, like, you can kind of see the happy accidents and things like that, you know, that happen in the process. So, that was a good art. I thought it was a good shared post. I hope he does that more when he does these weekly art posts. He does more of those. Although I can understand if he doesn't, because it probably takes a bit of time.
Yeah.
To put that together. Really good article on Gama Sutra. Top 10 mistakes tool developers make. I think this could apply more to just tool developers. I think you can extrapolate some of these to a lot of software, even games in general. Rundown. Number 1, no marketing. You just build it and think they will come. Number 2, no easy access to valuation copy, so I can't check it out.
That's huge with tools.
It is huge with tools, because it's like, I need to see if it works in my process, you know? And if I can't download your tool and see if I can integrate that with XNA, you've lost a potential customer. No clear price list, you know? Like, just tell me what it costs. I had such a fucking hard time finding out how much Dark Age of Camelot and EverQuest and Asheron's Call cost, because I was looking nostalgically at MMOs this last week, and I was like trying to find out how much they all cost. I can tell the answer is too damn much in all cases.
Do they cost more than World of Warcraft at this
They're all
point?
$13 to $17 a month, yes.
Wow.
And it's like $13 a month for Asheron's Call. I say good day to you, sir. You know? So no clear price list, no app demo, and that kind of ties into, you know, being able to evaluate it. No technical support, or, you know, could be potentially bad technical support, but like, you know, like, hey, just throwing it out there and not wanting to be contacted, that does not look good. You know, it's like, if you're going to throw it out there, you're going to need some kind of technical support, be it an email list or forum, that, you know, it's like, hey, I can ask you a question if I invest in that. And I know you don't want to be a support company, But technical support can also mean getting into custom versions for high-end clients. Basically, if you get big clients, they're going to want custom versions. That's a reality. And I know you just may want to make the tool, but the truth is, all of these tools that have these high-end clients, they're making custom builds for them left and right. And those high-end clients are driving the features in the next version. And that's the way these companies kind of expect things to work. No source code. This one you can get like dicey on, but he basically says like in the game world, beyond a certain level, source code's expected. And you can make that a price tier like Unity. You want the Unity source code, you pay the high tier. You know, you want the whole Unreal development kit, you pay the high tier. But there will be some kind of like, no, if we need to fix it for our own game, then we need to be able to do that. Multi-platform support, kind of obvious. Custom service offering, I kind of covered that there. Clear legal agreement, what the licensing is and is not, just to, you know, outline how many seats does this, you know, is it per developer, per studio, per project, how does it work? On that, you've got to be clear. And number 10 is being willing to sell your tool outside of game development, which I thought was kind of interesting but made perfect sense. Especially seeing like tiled add terrain support, because it's often requested, but it's not really a game need. But it's like, I could totally use your tool. Those other industries that may use your tool, you'll find out they are much more willing to pay than the game industry is for your tool. And that could be a nice stream of revenue that allows you to keep making the tool better by supporting some non-game uses for your tool. So I'll link to that show notes. The whole article is worth reading. Speculation time. Supposedly on February 20th, Sony's going to announce the next Xbox. They sent out...
Wait. PlayStation.
PlayStation, yes, thank you. They sent out an email and told everybody on the 20th, get ready for the future to the press. Which is crazy because now we're even pre-GDC, and Sony just said like a few weeks ago, why go first when the competition can copy you, right?
Because somebody probably told him, you are fucking insane.
Or they're like Sony ninjas and we're fucking with your mind because we're Ancient Orient.
It's the new PSP.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to announce the Vita 2.0. That's the future.
Marketing, it exists in a whole other reality.
That's
where
true.
Truth is fiction. And
that is true.
Logic is
I would
crazy.
not be greatly surprised by... Oh, it's the Vita 2.0. Look, it has 3D support, because what does Sony do now? Rip off Nintendo.
Well, and it could also be, it could be details, not necessarily specs on the new console, but maybe the online service or, you know, something else.
What people are saying there might be an advantage to Sony announcing the new console earlier, is that then they can just start announcing game after game after game, program after program after program, and just, you know, while Microsoft is still being secretive, they can make it look like their launch lineup is just awesome, so that by the time Microsoft announces their stuff, which Microsoft's being as slow and secretive as it can be.
A little coy.
And I don't know if that benefits them. Sony can take advantage of that space and then just win mind share, if not reality, right? So if the reality is that Microsoft has more third-party launch titles than Sony, it won't matter if all we've heard for the last 6 months have been all the third-party support for PlayStation.
And Microsoft came out ahead in this last console cycle, so there's more expectation on them, kind of like with the previous console cycle where Sony was. So
now, crazy talk here, but imagine if this leads to like an August launch for the PlayStation 4. Imagine if Sony is like, you've been thinking we've been doing a holiday release, huh? Fuck you. And we release in summer, and you know what? We're out before you, and we've got the lead. We've got to jump the gun. We've been planning it all along. You've fallen for our devious plan.
Because that works so well for the Wii U. I'm serious. Like, this console generation,
Yeah.
first mover advantage is only worth so much.
This edition,
Well, they won't do the
generation,
same mistake as the Wii U. Wii U does not sound like a new console.
Well, my point is, given that,
Anything called the PS4, the people are going, oh, that's the next new thing. Okay.
Yeah.
This generation is already so bizarre, off the rails. Things have changed so much that I don't even know, like, speculate anything, because anything could happen. This is totally... It's the fucking cannonball run of consoles at this
I do
point.
hope that if they're announcing something early, it truly is something crazy and just, completely unexpected, because right now from the consoles, I'm like, more of the same, just more powerful.
All I know is that expect more insanity as we go on.
Oh yes, we're going to get some more. People don't want backwards compatibility. People will buy it, even if it didn't play games. That's where we are in this console cycle.
Here's a heads up. Be careful about making a game about your job, because you could get fired from your job. So, this indie game developer, who by day worked for the Canadian tax arm of the government, he made a game about he worked at the phone support, where people would call in and ask for help on their taxes, and just a fucking moron. So he basically made, like, the Kobayashi Maru of call center games. Like, you can't win. You can never, like, appease these people, and...
So was the issue...
It launched, it was done for, like, a game jam.
Yeah.
And then he did it, and he put it out there, and got a few sales, and it got quiet. And then somebody from the Canadian press found it, and made a whole big issue, because he works for the Canadian tax arm of the government. And, I don't know if it's Stegosaurus Games. I don't know what aliases that Daniel Steger goes underneath. I wouldn't be surprised to know that Daniel does not actually know the guy.
You're just assuming because they're Canadian, they know each other.
Well,
provinces are pretty big, or at least.
But because, I mean, they are like in Toronto and things like that. I think that's where Stegs lives. Like, there is a large community up there. There's a large community of game developers. Yeah, I mean, this would be like Austin in the States.
Oh.
And David saying David Gallant is amazing. See, I think proven right.
Unless he's just making.
We're having a benefit concert for him next week, and he does know him.
Dear Lord. Why do you keep proving him right?
What was the issue with this? Is it
the Canadian ministry, like when they got word of the article, like, this is not conduct behaving, and we fired him, and, all of that.
Was the game talking about the working conditions? Was it talking about superiors? Was it talking about customers? Was it talking about...
The game is somebody calls you, and you basically, like, answer the phone, and, like, okay, could you give me your SIN, is the equivalent of Social Security number here? Could you give me your number? 111-111-111. Sir, that's not your number. Yes, it is. No, sir. That is not your number. Could you please give me your SSN number so we can proceed? No, and then it's like, you're timed on your calls, I imagine. I didn't get to play the game yet.
Yeah.
It's $2. I think I may go grab it just to check it out. But
support this guy.
Yeah, you kind of support him. And also, screwed. Like, you got fired over this, so I think he's going to land pretty well on his feet, because, it's anytime like this kind of thing happens, hopefully, the community support, like, propels you and gets you the exposure that you need to, like, it becomes later the thing you say, like, yeah, it was scary getting fired from my day job, but thank God I did, because I made indie games my full-time thing, and now I'm a successful indie game
developer.
I may not
have without...
And then me and Stegs got together, and we formed the Super Canadians Gaming Developer League, and we went in and we burned Phil Fish's house to the ground,
What? What does that have to do with anything?
Well, because he's up in Canada, too. Well, he was. He's coming back to the States.
He goes
I don't
back
know if he
and
was
forth.
exiled or by choice, but
And he doesn't even live on this planet.
Polytron is coming back to the States.
I'm pretty certain he said something ill about Celine Dion, and then things happened.
I don't know. I think Canada went like...
There's too much crazy here.
We just watched Indie Game the movie.
We're okay, hey, with stuck-up celebrities, eh? But you're just too far.
You're destroying our image.
Yeah.
Could you please leave, eh? We won't make you. But we'd be
Steak says, Phil Fish's programmer works in Toronto now. My question is, which one?
Oh, man.
Gabe Newell has an excellent interview, or not really an interview, but he gave a talk, and there's excellent coverage on, there's coverage, at Polygon, on it, and basically on Valve's future and all that, but it's really got, like, some good, like, where he came from and things like that, and it's kind of interesting because he's like talking about the time he's at like Microsoft and they're busting their ass off to come. So like that Windows is, you know, the third or the sixth. They move from like the 8th most installed software to the 6th most installed software. And here like the number 3 most installed software is Doom. And they're not going to conventions, and they're not buying ads in magazines, and they're not doing all of this shit that Microsoft is doing left and right to promote, where Gabe starts stepping back and saying, and this is what I really like about this article, of like, Microsoft's not really listening to its customers or taking its feedback into consideration, and they're kind of assuming they know best, and people will just follow, and I'm like reading this, and it's like, it's so funny because he's talking about Microsoft like circa 1980.
Yeah.
And it's like totally Microsoft circa 2012 and 2013. Like it has not changed, or it changed for a little while and then it changed back. But it's a really great article of where Gabe is kind of thinking and where Valve goes. And the interesting thing about Gabe is he's kind of open, but at the same time, he's not revealing a lot. You know, he's always like, yeah, we're working on hardware, but not telling you what the Steam box is or when it's coming or if it's a thing. And it's like, this other thing showed up in our booth and it's a Steam box and, there will be platforms that run it and, we'll support third party and all that. It's in your booth, Gabe. Like, that kind of implies a little bit more than more. So is it the box? Are you making your own, So, it's always interesting. I always kind of like Gabe Newell interviews because, he's just one of the personalities in the industry that I kind of like just to follow in general. And speaking of Valve, a German activist group is taking Valve to court over not being able to resell their digital purchase games.
Interesting.
Okay? They've done it once before, and either the German, I didn't follow too deeply, but the German High Court or the EU Court basically said they don't have to. They haven't done anything illegal by not allowing you digital resell rights, even though you can resell your physical game. They haven't blocked you from reselling your physical game, and they don't have to allow you to do it from software. And then I think they also complained, too, the same group complained when Valve changed its EULA to you can't sue us as a class action.
Which is pretty much what every service
everybody has done.
But that would be an interesting precedent.
But this is what makes this interesting and the reason I linked to it. The EU passed a ruling, and this is dealt with Oracle, that Oracle could not control sales of its licensing after the first sale. So like this company sold its licenses to Oracle, to another company. Or they went out of business and they sold the licenses, or another company went in, and that went to the EU Supreme Court or something. I don't know how government works over in Europe, so I probably say some of this wrong. But it went to the high courts. And And it went pretty far up the chain, and enough that it would have jurisdiction over Germany, potentially. And that court basically said, no, Oracle, once you've sold that license the first time, these companies can resell those licenses if they make unavailable or subsequently destroy the copies on their own machines. So as long as they can no longer access the software, and they guarantee that, by deleting and getting rid of all the software and then sell all that information and hand that over to the third party and don't run it, then yes, they can transfer that over. Oh, I think I know the company it was. It was a company that kind of specialized in buying up and selling used licenses. Took them to court because that was a business model.
That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. So anyway, that shines new light back on can or cannot Steam block digital sales, so it gives them the right to enter that back in court. So
that becomes kind of a weird thing, though, because like with an Oracle license, it's a product key you can install, you can uninstall. It's not necessarily tied to an account, where Steam is tied to.
Right.
It's not just a natural.
So Steam has to. Oracle doesn't have to do anything on their side to enable sales.
Yeah, Steam
does.
It's not just naturally there.
So it will be interesting because they kind of have the right, because of that EU ruling, to reconsider the prior ruling. And it's interesting because even though it's in Europe, companies tend to kind of support the lowest common denominator on systems like that. So if Steam has to end up adding that feature, everybody may get it.
Yeah.
But Steam's comment was, where's Steam's comment here? Oh, maybe I didn't link the right post. That had the good comment in it. Valve sent a response. Yeah. I saw Valve had a comment that was essentially along the lines of, we've dealt with these guys before in 2008, 2010. They've lost their case. We don't see this as a concern. And, we are currently, still providing software to our customers in Germany. And it almost had, the tact of, if this becomes a fucking deal, we'll just stop selling Steam in Germany. Fuck you, Germans. Because, Germany is already, on the far end of the censorship spectrum with the no Nazis and things like that they have to filter all that stuff. It just becomes
more
and
complicated.
All that. And it's like, you know what, Germans? Fuck it. We're done. All right, we're out. We're out. We're done.
So y'all get some damn common sense peace.
Yeah. We're going to go deal with Australia's bullshit instead of Germany's bullshit, because you just became worse than Australia. All right? We'd rather deal with Australia than Germany. So.
Well, but at the same time, too, if Steam is looking at doing used game sales or something like that, that's a whole different beast from being able to trade copies yourself in a way that Steam is not managing and not basically controlling.
Well, if they did it themselves, they would be the managers, and if you went around that, you would be going around the protection that was inherent to having a single copy of an item.
Well, and we talked about this on the EMCO Gamers podcast, which we went on the week we were off our podcast. We were actually on the EMO Gamers podcast. Or we did it right after the one we recorded or whatever.
I don't remember.
On Casual Sunday Gamer. We were on Casual Sunday Gamers podcast to talk about digital distribution and the move from physical to digital, and have that debate. And one of the things that I pointed out is this is really a good thing, because if Valve or the digital services enable reselling within their service, they can compensate the publishers. They can set resale rates. So basically, if I want to give you my copy of Saints Row, okay, then Valve can deem that a used copy of Saints Row is $15, and that I will get $5 credit Valve on Steam for selling my copy. and then Valve keeps $5, and THQ gets $5, or whoever owns Volition.
Yeah.
The Koch brothers. No, something.
Cokes?
Koch, something.
Cokes. It's
Koch-
Koche. I think.
Fucking German too, isn't it?
Yes.
Fucking Germans.
So actually, Ed,
That's why we're gonna fucking lose
Ed Koch
dildos,
just,
because it's going to fucking Germany. Oh fuck! All right.
The Koch brothers did not buy. Like,
No.
Okay.
It's not
Okay.
those. It's still KOCH, but it's not the Destroying America Koch brothers. It's not them. It's a different
It's the
media company.
We Like Money
Yeah.
Koch brothers.
Sorry. Anyway,
Yeah.
so they can kind of control that market and still serve that need. And all parties kind of get what they want. You know, you get to sell your game. You know, you get something kicked back on it. The publishers get something on that. The service, encourages that. And, it could even be a case where I don't even have to find a buyer. I could just,
Yeah, but I wonder
put my name in a queue and it does it, game trading style.
I wonder, especially given that this was a third-party service in the Oracle case, I wonder if a service like that, if Steam was forced to do it, that probably wouldn't satisfy what the courts are looking for, I would guess, because it's still Steam controlling it. It's still Steam controlling the transfer of that license past the first sale.
Possibly, but Steam could argue that the ability is there and that...
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's silly that they make that requirement since it's not, just naturally
has to
part of
be
the process, but...
Although they could
know.
make that case. They could make that case that, like, hey, you don't have any rights to this after the first sale, and they could stick to that hard. So it'll be interesting, but I think it's going to be the kind of thing that if it goes anywhere interesting, it's going to be years to play out.
Yeah.
So just to end the podcast, I started saying this earlier when I was talking about getting our SNES. I didn't talk about the SNES. I think it's an outtakes.
Yes.
But now that we have it, and I'm going to start recording me playing all the games that I never played that everybody else has, I need a name for that show. I don't want to call it Mike Plays, because Mike Plays is me playing games.
It's not going to be this, like, super long episodic thing.
Well, it might be. No. These games will be me completing most of these games.
Yeah,
it won't
well,
be just
what I
me,
mean is, like,
check him out.
Mike Plays is just, like, you sit down for 30 minutes most cases, not you play an entire game through and you record off
Right.
of it.
So, I mean, I am finishing some of the games that I'm playing on Mike Throughs, but some of them I'm just doing, like, 30 minutes of Unreal.
Yeah.
And I say the things I like about it, game design-wise, and then I'm kind of done. So I don't want to call it Mike Plays.
Didn't you have a name for it at some point?
Well, no. See, the thing is that I've been trying to kick around something along the lines of, like, the education of Mike, or, like, there's that wonderful album, the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
The retro education of Mike.
Well, see, I kind of like the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, but it's not really like the miseducation, because it's not like the result. It's going back, so that doesn't work. I haven't got anything that sticks yet. So
I think you can
podcast at GameMarx.com if you have any ideas.
I like the retro education of Mike Newell.
What do they call those? What are those camps always called?
Re-education?
Re-education camp? Or
No, it is
Re-education Center?
Yeah.
He's been sent for re-education and things like that. Yeah, something like that. I haven't come up quite with a name, but it's going to be much more of a Game Grump style show of me sitting with somebody else playing the game.
Someone
and
who's already played it.
I can't really make many times, possibly, but I mean, there might be some games that we play. Like, I am going to play the original Final Fantasy, Cicely. You didn't play that, did you?
Not originally.
Yeah, so
no.
we'll probably sit down and play the original one together, so neither one have played this.
I mean,
It's not going to be game design level
I've played
commentary, because you
ports
can't
of
do that because you haven't played it.
but I didn't play it originally.
I've played the first Final Fantasy, so...
The SNES education? Yeah, but it may just not be SNESs, so it'll be some NES, but those will be rare, because I did play most of those. A lot of SNES.
If you want to...
Master System and PlayStation 1 will probably start creeping in there at some point, and maybe even PS2 games. because that whole chunk is what I've missed. And for a lot of people, there's golden era titles, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about gameplays of Chrono Trigger and Link to the Past. It's not going to be Chrono Trigger because I did go play that already. But that's what I'm talking about hitting. I'm not talking about trying to be like Angry Video Game Nerd or Game Grumps and find these esoteric bad ones. I'm talking about like Donkey Kong Country. Never fucking played a Donkey Kong Country game. That seems to be popular, you know? I can't even say I've played Mario Kart. I may have played Mario Kart once or twice on the Wii, and that's it. Super Smash Brothers, once or twice on the Wii, that's it. So I'd like to go back to, like, this is the original Mario Kart. This is the original Smash Brothers.
I would like to bring my brothers up here.
At the time that's appropriate, too. Like, I'm not just going to dive in and play Smash Brothers. By the time I dive in and play Smash Brothers, I will have played the characters that are in it.
Yeah, I was going to say, are we talking about the 64? Because that...
Is that when it came out?
64 was the first version of Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers?
Yeah.
Okay.
NES was the
first Mario Kart?
Super NES was the first Mario Kart.
Yeah. So I want to have referencing on those characters.
You're going to kind of play things chronologically, although I imagine some
not
things
super
will,
chronologically.
Like, you may go back and go, like,
if it
I
matters.
forgot this.
Chronologically, if it matters.
Okay.
If there will be... If there is some case to be made of, like, you really need to play this first before that to gain an appreciation of where someone would have been at this game. But if that's not the case... expect a lot of swearing, too. Because a lot of these golden games are straight-up JRPGs.
Actually, what was funny was...
They defined the bad things of JRPGs.
What's funny is I missed out on most of the PS1 era, probably most of the PS2 era, and the N64 era. And what's funny is, like the N64 seems to be this golden age, especially for like the generation.
Polygonal platforming and yeah.
But what's funny is, like, at one point
even
last year...
Zelda seems to have
I don't get that.
A very nostalgic love on N64.
Yeah, I'm...
At the time, it was good. It felt good. Well, it felt good.
If it's not top-down, it's not Zelda.
I'm with you on that camp.
Yeah.
We may differ between Zelda 2, Link to the Past. We may have some nuanced discussions there.
I'm okay with Zelda 2, though.
But
which seems
which is still partially top-down.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm like, if it's not top-down, it's not Zelda.
Yeah. Well...
I don't know. I liked Twilight Princess.
I liked Twilight Princess. Skyward Sword was too far out in left field.
I started it and didn't get into it.
But no, what I was going to say about... there was a Saturday last year, a bunch of people got together in the area, and we did Mario Kart, like, all versions. We had a Super NES, an N64, a GameCube, and a Wii. And I had only played a tiny bit of Mario Kart 64, but it was by far the most annoying version. And it's you know...
Because by that point, everybody who had gotten used to the shitty controls on the first one was like, oh, I can do everything on this one.
I picked up and played a Nintendo 64 at a friend's house who had a kid, and he had gotten him the controller, and I played a little bit of some Mario game. But I remember picking up that controller going, how the fuck am I supposed to hold this thing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm missing the third arm obviously required to interface with this thing. I mean, it really just started like the Nintendo 64... I don't know, Nintendo had done this in the past, but they had not baked it into a system-level thing like they did with the Nintendo 64. But it really started what the fuck, Nintendo? Like, I get that you want to reinvent things and think outside the box, but not every idea needs to be made.
Well, what's interesting is I think that actually did introduce the analog stick, but, you know, I see why they did it. Like, I see why they did it. Like, you have the choice of how to play. Now... we do the same exact thing, but because we only have, like, 2 grips and everything, we just move our thumbs instead of moving our whole hand. Like, it's more intuitive. And that was a tangent.
Home the Robot here in chat just said, you have to play Majora's Mask before you make a fair judgment. And I don't even know what the fuck that means.
But what's funny is I've also heard
do not
Ocarina
get
of
the
Time.
Majora's Mask references. I don't get the comics. I have no idea what the fuck it's talking about. I can recognize it now, but in the way of like...
I can't tell the difference between
I
the
know
64 Zelda.
that's a reference to
There I said
Gundam style, but I don't know what Gundam style is type thing, you know?
I think like we're in the same camp. Like we don't know, and we don't really want to know.
No, I
like-
do kind of want to know. As a game designer, I think going back and expanding, I think as a gamer there's value, but definitely as a game designer, there is value in going in and playing a breadth of games from different eras and different types, whether or not that's your game. In fact, I even think as a game designer, it is more important that you play games you don't like necessarily and try to appreciate things in them. Not saying it's going to change your mind, but you get a richer palette from which to draw on in your own game design.
Well, you don't just assume there is only one way to do everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I
So,
agree.
all right. That wraps up the show. I want to thank everyone who tuned in to the live podcast, everybody who watches this stream on YouTube, and who watches it get wildly out of sync by the end, because fuck Wirecast, they can't make software worth shit. Thank you for the people who download the audio podcast in the traditional format, and we're going to be back and do this again in a week.
You've been listening to GameMarx. Visit us at GameMarx.com for the latest news, reviews, and videos on indie gaming. That's GameMarx.com.
Got a lot tagged.
A lot of news tagged. You
Yeah.
thinking you won't be able to hit it?
Well,
all?
I'm wondering, I'm thinking of cutting, I was going to talk about the fake Xbox specs story.
I did not realize. I'd seen a story about it.
A guy
I didn't realize it was-
completely manufactured a story, wrote an email, sent it off to several of the press sites, a couple of them, and said, hey, I'm a guy who works on the Xbox QA department team, and I want you to know, like, you got some specs right, but these specs are wrong, and just made up bullshit.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it ran all over the place, and sites quoted sites and everything like that, and I mean, he basically just pointed out, like, they all link to each other, and it's all like, Kotaku reports that Joystick reported that, you know, some dude's blog reported that sources said that I thought, you know, and it's like that Cliff Bleszinski tweeted, you know, and it's like, he just, like, sent it to him, they all ran it, and then he sent out a thing on his blog saying, like, made the whole fucking shit up. And nobody bothered to, like, fact check me, contact me back.
Where had they gotten the original specs? You said he corrected some of their specs?
Well, because
Or
there
he-
were, like, some leak specs going around.
Yeah.
So he took that article and then, like, added in just made up shit, you know, of, like,
Okay.
oh, we're gonna, no, we're gonna, like, totally, like, have, like, 5 lenses on the Kinect and Blu-ray support or something, or, no, what did he...
I thought I'd seen specs that said Blu-ray. They'd be crazy not to do Blu-ray support at this
Yeah,
point.
I forget what's real and what's made up,
Yeah.
and what's made up by this guy and what was made up in other sources. I think
Have
it's
you
gonna-
watched Daily Show in the past couple weeks? Like since the Mantateo thing hit?
I haven't seen Daily Show in like 8 months.
Okay.
It's just fallen out of my viewing pattern.
Because what he'll like, there's this running joke ever since the guy's name is Mantateo, isn't it? The college football star who had like the made up internet girlfriend, and ever since he covered that, you know, like that seems to come up in every, you know, such and such was really noted internet hoaxer Tuasa Sopo. Tuasa Sopo.
We've been playing Letterpress. I don't know if you can get Letterpress on Android or not.
What is letter? Is it like a word game? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I guess it's Boggle style, Boggle derivative, because it's a 5x5 letter grid. But when you make a word, you go back and forth making words. And when you make a word, those tiles flip to your color. And then if you manage to flip all the tiles adjacent to it, just north, south, east, and west, you have to do diagonals, then that becomes like a permanent flip tile. Not really permanent. It becomes protected for the next round. If you play one that's unprotected but flipped, then it flips back to your color, and you're just trying to get the most points, and you get 1 point for every tile flipped of your color. If you play a flipped tile that is solid, like you have boxed it in, you can still use that tile, but it won't change to your color, and you won't get a point for it. But you can still use it to make a word. And of course you can't play words that have already been played, and you can't play words that are subwords that start with a word that's already been played. Okay. So if I play like played, you can't play, right? Because I did that. But if I just play play, then you could play played. But I could play plays because that's a different ending. Okay. It's really kind of novel, and it goes back, and Cicely and I have been playing it a bit at night. It's got an interesting, good. You didn't. It's free, but to play multiple games at once. Like, I don't know if you played the Zynga word game that was popular for a while, Words with Friends.
No, I didn't.
So like you get a bunch of games going at once, basically, because you're waiting on people to move. So you play a bunch of games at once. That way you can go make a bunch of moves whenever you have time. They charge for that. So it's a $2 game, but it's free to play one game at a time. If you want to see the played word list or have multiple games going on, then it's $2. There's never ads in it, as far as I can tell. And there's no more microtransactions and all that. So it's a really good way of doing it, because it's like, okay, here you go. You can play the game. It's like a fully featured trial. You can kind of, feel it out.
There's a clear pain point that forces you to upgrade.
And then, there's a point of like, okay, I like this, and I definitely want more, and here's your $2, and I feel like, it doesn't feel like, oh, you're cheating me or something like that.
You're tricking me.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, I gotta buy fucking Smurf berries now to continue playing this. So we've been playing that tonight. So I won the first game, because I don't think Cicely connected that. It's not really about making long words. It's about territory control on the board.
Yeah.
So I was able to win the first one, but then she started kicking my ass, and I think like the next 7 I lose.
Let me see if that's...
And then tonight, I was hanging out with my daughter, Rachel, the oldest daughter. And I was like, let's see if Cicely will play while we were out. And she did. She started playing. So Rachel was like playing with me. And she's like nailing like all these long ass words that are, because what I'll do is when you play a word, I'll throw up all your tiles I can take back from you and try to make a word using those, because they're the most damaging. Because you lose a point and I get a point. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's like those I want to play with, and she was just like nailing like all these really long, like, oh shit, you're right, I could play all these, and I mean she pretty much beat Cicely 2 games in a row handedly, on that. Cicely doesn't realize now it's kind of both of us, because I was playing and I was like, oh, I want to go for this, I want to get these letters and play on it, and then we get the board we're on now has like an O, an I, and a U. One of each, no other vowels. There's like 2 V's, 2 X's, a Z, a Q. Like, this is a fucked board to be playing, And so it's like, man, this is gonna be a rough one to get through. But you could play fuck. Like, the letters were there, and I was throwing it up, and Rachel was like, oh, I see a word that I shouldn't say, and I was like, oh, I see it. She's like, they wouldn't let you play that. And I was like, I don't know. And it's like, it'd be funny if you did, and so like it came back, and I played fucks, because I don't want Cicely, I don't play fuck, and then Cicely turned around and play fucks, because she can make it longer. You always like, fucky, and fucking, and it's like, you don't just stop at fucks. So we sent that over, and then, it took it, was not a good word to play, like strategically.
Yeah, but you just have to find out.
And then,
if you
like,
can.
we followed it up with, you know, because, like, then I saw that, then I immediately, like, oh, look, bitchy, you know, play that. Well, can I take bitchy? Or does bitchy require an EY, because we don't have an E, you know? You can just do bitchy Y?
I've never seen it as EY. Not that
I can't
that's
say
a
I've
word
seen
I
it
see.
spelled a lot. And then it takes, you know, then I
Yeah.
couldn't punch in bitchy, we play that, you know? You know, she's getting a chuckle out of it and things like that. And then it's just like, and I'm like, you know, we've lost this game now. Like, because we went for, like, this
High school,
immature humor, we've lost this game, okay? Because I think when we played Fuck, Cicely came back with, like, suckings or something like that, and just, like, oh, crap, it's, like, this long, it's taking all these peaches. Yeah, so we lost that, but, yeah.
Yeah. I've started playing...
Did you find it on Android?
No,
Letterpress?
it's not on Android. I've started playing Elder Signs Omens on Android, which is... It's a version of Fantasy Flight Games, or not Arkham Horror. It's part of that series, but Elder Sign, which... It's like a $3 or $4 game. And instead of being a 4-player game where everyone chooses an investigator, it's a 1-player game where you have a team of 4 investigators. So the idea is, it's basically a dice game where you roll, you pick a task, you pick an adventure, you try to complete a certain number of tasks with, the dice you're given, and it's got some complicated rules, but, I don't know, it's much simpler than a lot of games like Arkham Horror.
I explicitly did not tag our podcast because of XNA. Because believe it or not, I do have some kind of moral scruples left, and that kind of felt slightly exploitative.
Yeah, I did not mean it that
like,
way.
Hey,
that was not
we're going to talk about because of XNA.
That was not the implication at all.
In fact, I already know what I'm going to name this podcast, but I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to name this podcast so that you're not uncomfortable the whole show. That probably makes it worse, but...
That makes it worse because I'm curious. Just go ahead and tell me.
No.
It's not going to make me uncomfortable.
No.
It's really not going to... Why is it going to make me uncomfortable?
It makes most men uncomfortable.
Go on. No, seriously, go on.
So, we got our SNES, finally.
Okay.
I think I've had the worst eBay experience possible that ends with you still getting your item.
I would not trust buying an old piece of hardware like that. Something I know I'm going to have to pay $60
Well,
for.
everybody fucking, like, took their Christmas money
and
it's
it's
like turned around and bought a SNES because all the used SNES
I would just be afraid shipping
Knoxville
would
and
destroy it.
all the surrounding towns are gone all of a sudden when there was tons of them before Christmas. So everybody's like, fuck, I didn't get what I wanted. Well, I'm going to go fucking buy a 15-year-old, 20-year-old, 20-year-old, 25-year-old console, 30-year-old. How fucking old is SNES? 20, 25.
Mid-90s.
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 Yeah. So, went on eBay and we were like, oh, we'll buy one. And I found a buy it now and it was like $70. And I was like, that's about the going rate of what I've seen. You can get a little better and you can do a little worse, but I was not interested in saving $5 or $10 in either direction.
Yeah.
Bought it, supposed to ship in a week, doesn't fucking ship. Hey, where is it? Like, oh, I just haven't uploaded the code. Here's the tracking code. Oh, okay. I go pull up the tracking code. No, the fucking tracking code, electronic shipment information received that fucking day. Like, you didn't forget to put it in, you forgot to fucking ship it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't know how that process works, because I see that with a lot of places.
Console goes to fucking Indiana. That wasn't even our shipping number, our aux in our console. It's like somebody else's. And now I'm kind of pissed off because it's like, eBay goes like, hey, your item arrived, so leave your feedback, or file a complaint. And it's like, but that's not it. So I'm after them like, can you change that? I don't know if they can, but are you able to change it? They never answer that question. So please blank it out and change it. And hey, you just shit, that's the wrong one. You put in the wrong code. And like, oh, wait, sorry about that. We're fixing it. We're putting in like we're going to include like a free game with it, which I'm thinking like, yeah, I'm going to get a fucking copy of some Madden knockoff sports shit. whatever, right? I'm going to get a game I don't give a fuck about.
At least you're going to get it, I guess.
Nobody's going to pack in Link to the Past or Chrono Trigger in this situation, right? So she's saying like, hey, we're going to ship it out. And then it's like, okay, where's that? Okay. And then finally like, oh yeah, sorry, as soon as I get back to the computer, I'll put in that shipping number. A couple more days go by. It's like, hey, where's that shipping number?
Was this from like a company that sells a lot of these?
This is supposed to be the used game store company that's also on eBay, which initially made me feel better because it wasn't some random person. Yeah. It was like, okay, they're a used game store company.
This is a normal thing. They do this. They know how to pack it.
Well, it seems like if you run a used game store, this would be something you do regularly anyway, just for inventory, you know?
Yeah.
And again, same thing. Oh, okay. Yeah, I put it in there now, and the tracking number goes in, and the tracking number was shipped that day, which is almost a week from the time when they claimed they shipped it. And again, it says, you know, tracking number, electronic shipment information received. At which point, I fucking call Mom, who works for the U.S. Postal Service, you know, because a tracking confirm number doesn't give you the address or zip code of where it's going. It just gives you the progress, and not until it arrives you get the final destination. Right. And I'm like, look, I don't want to. eBay is saying like, hey, February 13th, you've got to like either leave your feedback or file a complaint, you know, for your buyer protection program.
Yeah.
Which I'm also telling them like, hey, I want my item. Like, even all burned aside, like, it's not worth it for me to cancel this, get a refund, go back in, buy another. Just, if I fucking wind up with it, I'm fine, okay? But I'm not going to go past the 13th without filing a complaint that you didn't send me my shit. So, like, cough it up here, you know?
Yeah.
And, so, you know, they put the tracking in there, and the thing is I start looking down their list and start realizing they've been bidding on and buying Nintendo units, SNESs. And now I'm like, did they like a fucking buy my Nintendo after my auction and send me that one? Because a couple of them that they bought from listed the serial numbers of the consoles in the auction. I haven't gone in to confirm, but it's like, if I do that, man, you better believe you'll get one fucking star. Like, I don't give a shit. That's some shady ass shit. Not to just come mea culpa, I shipped the wrong one to the wrong place or whatever, and I will get you a new SNES and make it right. Like, this was just like claiming to like, oh, you know, I didn't put the wrong number in. Like, the lying, you know, and on there did not help, especially when it was like obvious lies. Like, I can look at the tracking number and see you did not ship it last week. So, but we did get it today. Cicely put some cartridges in it, and almost all the cartridges work, but I have not cleaned our cartridges, nor have I taken this unit apart, and I'll do a cleaning on it. I'll just get a guide online of, like, cleaning a SNES, because I've done that with our Nintendos, with her Nintendo explicitly. Like, I dismantled the entire thing. I didn't get a guide, because I had mine and it worked, and hers was kind of working, but fuzzing out, I was just like, no, I was going to take this apart and got some alcohol and rubbing alcohol, you know, and just like clean the leads, and, you know, I was like, there's surprisingly little like electronics in there and contacts, and they come apart really easily. It's not like taking apart an iPhone or something now and you got this weird glue and shit. So the SNES will probably come apart easily, but I'll find a guide online since I don't have a backup one laying around, clean it, clean the carts, and then see where we're at.
Did you guys say there was a company here in Knoxville that did repairs on those? Because I remember when we were talking about those before, because I've got the one that like stopped working at some point.
Oh yeah? I don't know if any of the like Packards or exchange places I've seen advertised they'll do repairs.
I'll ask Cicely when she comes back down, because I remember talking about that with someone, but I can't remember who it was. Anyway.
No, you don't want, so the problem is like the SNES games don't emulate, they're saying like this sounds like a ton of work for something using the emulator for, and emulators aren't perfect, and they have issues, and the ones that they seem to have issues on are the fucking games you would probably go back and play. Link to the Past,
I don't know.
Chrono Trigger.
I had no problem with Link to the Past on an emulator.
Really? Every emulator I've gone, the graphics are always fucking up on Link to the Past.
I think the emulator I used was SNES 9X.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a number of them out number of different emulators out there, but that was the one I used.
Yeah, so I mean, to do this for the video series, I'm willing to go ahead and just spend the $60-$70.
Yeah.
Go through and buy cards. Which, by the way, we're ready to start the show at any moment, but wait for Cicely to get back down here.
Well, I've got Link to the Past if you want to.
I've got Link to the Past.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
I've got Link to the Past with my Dread Brothers save game on it. It's kind of creepy. Kind of awesome and creepy. It's like finding a voice message on an answering machine 14 years after they died, and then you just find the message, you know? It's like, it's just Link to the Past. It's almost like I'll buy another Link to the Past cart and play on it, because it's like...
You don't want to...
You don't want to delete... It's weird, though. Like, why don't you want to delete? It's not like there's anything personal about that, but it's his playthrough.
Yeah, no, I can kind of get that, because I don't think I've had any reason to boot it up, but Dad, like, my grandfather had a Nintendo, and he played, like, NES Open Tournament Golf.
There is, I forget who did the article. I know Tested.com talked about it, but I forget who did the article. You can go to Tested.com and search about, like, emulation of consoles, but somebody did a great article of why you can never perfectly emulate these consoles, on there's just hardware issues and things lost to time and just all that. But because I want to do video, I mean, that's the whole program. So this is what I was going at. You know, we want to record video because I did not own a Super Nintendo. Did not have the Sega. Was it Genesis at the time?
Yeah, I guess so. It was Master System, Genesis. And...
That was a 16-bit system?
Yeah.
Never had hands-on access or played any of that. Did not do PlayStation 1. Did not really do PlayStation 2 games either.
Yeah.
But at least PlayStation 2 era games, I was getting back into console gaming. So there's this massive swath of what's considered like the golden age, especially for like JRPGs and a lot of these series like Donkey Kong Country got their start in that generation. So I just think it'd be really cool to do a GameMarx video series, you know, let's play. But, like, I'm going back and it's like, okay, I'm going to play Star Fox. You know, this is apparently, let's do a barrel roll. Like, this is a meme-tastic game.
See, the interesting thing about...
Maybe the game was great or may not, but it's like, I did not play that game. And kind of as a game designer, like, going back and experiencing it, but experiencing it the way other people did too, putting down a microphone and recording the gameplay and, you know, making some content out of it. So it'll probably start off trying to be, like... sequelitis level of commentary and devolve into Game Grumps. Of like, we're not even talking about what we're playing. It's on, like, Sonic 06 is on the screen. They honestly could have recorded that conversation at any point and just, like, married the two together later.
Well, I don't know, most, like...
Have you been watching Game Grumps?
No.
I mean, they're into, like, 50-some videos now into Sonic 06.
You can't, like, have something... that is design-related or review-related to say about every moment in a game, so... That's understandable.
See, Stags is behind me. See, he's all supportive. He knows that I'll never reach sequelitis level anyway.
Oh.
Wow.
Alright. Let's, moment of silence... for the noise filtering, not for XNA or anything like that.
I thought that was the joke.
Yeah, it was the joke.
It was a joke, but that's what it'll be used for. And start the show.